Okay, first, I'm going to argue that STDs will not spread more rapidly if prostitution is legalized. Second, violence towards prostitution is due to prostitution being forced underground and it being criminalized. Third, prostitution is not a crime. As Stephanie stated earlier, our proposition is to legalize prostitution in regulated brothels in California. First, STDs will not spread more rapidly if prostitution is legalized. The spread of STDs and other health threats involved with prostitution will be prevented through legalizing and regulating prostitution. The prevention of STDs and such health risks must be regulated in order to slow down the spread of the diseases. According to Priscilla and Alexander, co-founder of the National Task Force on Prostitution, for HIV/AIDS prevention to succeed, the conditions of risk have to change. The context of legal, social, economic of sex work has to change. With repeal of criminal laws, access to visas and work permits, freedom from movement, association, and occupational safety, and health regulations, to reduce the imposition of the risk above. Until then, it will be heroic, strong individuals that can insist on safe behaviors, leaving those who are less heroic, those who are more timid and afraid, to suffer consequences on the context of risk. Without prostitution legalization, the spread of the disease will just continue. Through legalizing prostitution, we can regulate each prostitute's health. According to Mark Liberator in Legalized Prostitution, Regulating the Oldest Profession, the status quo is a poor health safety plan. With sexually transmitted diseases like syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, herpes, prostitutes must be monitored to prevent the spread of these infections. It makes practical sense to monitor prostitutions, and what better way is there to monitor them than legalizing it and regulating it. Legalization would require prostitutes to undergo regular medical examinations. STDs would be prevented from being spread, as well as other communicable ailments like hepatitis and tuberculosis. We also consider the factor of rape and the spread of diseases in prostitution. The prevalence of rape is reduced with legalization of prostitution. According to Kirby R. Cundiff, PhD, professor of finance at Northeastern State University, it's estimated that if prostitution were legalized in the United States, the rate would decrease by roughly 25%. That's about 25,000 rapes per year. Therefore, the legalization and regulation of prostitution rate will decrease, and so will the spreading of STDs. Second, violence towards prostitutes is due to prostitution being forced underground and it being criminalized. The fact that prostitution is forced underground, the violence is intensified. According to Carol Lee, founder of Bay Area Sex Worker Advocacy Network and former prostitute, if prostitution were not an underground activity, it would allow us to much more effectively address the serious problems of forced prostitution and other abuses, which are part of an industry that operates completely in the shadows. Whatever ills are attendant to prostitution, criminalization of prostitution exacerbates the abuse. Other violence, including human trafficking, are more vulnerability of prostitutes through the act of violence is due to the criminalization of the prostitutes and subsequently prostitution being forced underground. Human trafficking is a serious matter of prostitution, but we're allowing it to happen by not recognizing that prostitution exists. Prostitutes can be protected if prostitution is legalized and regulated. Human trafficking can be stopped. According to Marwan Wires, chair of the European Commission's expert group on human trafficking, criminalizing the sex industry creates ideal conditions for rampant exploitation of sex workers. Prostitutes are seen as vulnerable to attacks and violence because the profession is not regulated and simply ignored. According again to Mark Liberator, the lowest layer prostitutes are slaves with the most problems. It is the group that usually remains perpetually vulnerable. They work in conditions that make them prone to violence due to lack of supervision. Violence, including human trafficking towards prostitutes, can be stopped through regulating and legalizing prostitution. Lastly, third, prostitution is not a crime. When we treat prostitutes as criminals, more problems like disease and violence proliferate, as I stated earlier. According to Sherry Cole at Rutgers Law, prostitution should not be a crime. Prostitutes are committing inherently harmful acts. They are not committing a inherently harmful act. While the spread of disease and other detriments are possible in the practice of prostitution, criminalization is a sure way to exacerbate rather than addressing such effects. What makes prostitution a victimless crime is that, in the sense that no one is necessarily harmed by it, and that there are two consenting adults involved. When these, as Greg said earlier, when they're prosecuted, they're sent to life houses, but these life houses aren't going to protect them or cure them, like as if prostitution is treated as a disease. According to Duncan Campbell from the Family Court Chronicles, these girls are known as runners. No matter what home or institution you place them in, they're likely to take off running back to their pimps. Therefore, the safe houses would likely be a locked facility, probably built especially for the purpose. It's just like if you send a drug addict to rehab, he's going to have to go several times, and just once isn't going to cure him. In conclusion, prostitution needs to be recognized as a profession in order to prevent these diseases from spreading and to stop the violence within prostitution.